There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started here. How many of you guys, real quick, and Liba, I'm going to talk directly to you, but I want everybody to kind of to join in with us here. How many of you guys are here, just so I understand you guys better? How many of you guys are here because you want to raise money? Yes or no? One or two down in the comments. Okay. That's why we're here. Okay, cool. Number two, and these are not rhetorical questions. I'm actually curious here. How many of you guys are here because you want to be or are the leader or like the face of your brand? Like you're trying to build some form of like a movement, or like you're going to be the face, not invisible behind the scenes. Okay, most of you guys. Okay, couple of you are, most of them are. Okay, awesome. And then finally, number three, how many of you guys are here because your family or something besides work is the main reason that's driving you, right? Maybe it's your faith, maybe it's family, maybe it's your kids, your spouse, one or two down below. You're not just here right now for that. Because I want to be very transparent as we kind of dive in and get started here, Liba. If that's not you, that's fine, but I will probably not be your person, right? You should probably not listen to me. Family is very important to me. My faith is very important to me. And when Liba says that I print money on the internet, or that I'm a master at storytelling or whatever, I kind of laugh at that, because it is true. I print money, but the reason that I am kind of a master at storytelling is I'm not actually that great at storytelling. I'm really good at understanding how to tell stories that get someone to take action, and get someone to ultimately give me money. Can I share is that okay if I share that with you guys here today? Liba, is that cool?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Because I want to back up, and I kind of want to start today with a story to kind of back up and how I got with all this, because I actually at that event that Liba and I met at, it was what's his name?
Fund launch.
Yeah, but who's the guy that put it on? I can't remember. Pennington, Bridger Pennington, right? We were there. I got to meet all these really, really cool, amazing, fun people that are way smarter than I am and have raised way more money than I am or whatever. And what's interesting is, as I started like talking to like people over and over and over and over, like I noticed a couple of patterns of the people that were like super duper successful, like the people that had raised like hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars, right? Like they basically never told me anything about their deals. It was very interesting, right? And so I started to think about, if I were going to go in to get into a fund, if I were to go start raising money, if I'm going to go kind of start raising capital on this, like what would I do knowing the skills that I have now? Now, really quick, I'm just going to give a super brief background around me. I got started in the internet marketing space online about 7 or 8 years ago. I grew and managed about 7 million followers on social media for clients. We had a network of about 100 million, between 100 and 120 million people that we had a network of. So we could grow Instagram followers and people like really, really quickly. Fast forward, I had a multi 7-figure business and then a 7-figure coaching business. We've sold about $20 million or so on the internet. And have gotten to network with all the fun people, right? The Russell Brunsons of the world, and kind of spoken on stages. But as I was sitting there thinking about what I would do differently, I was taken all the way back to kind of the very beginning of my journey, like online and with selling things. How many of you guys, real quick, one or two in the comments down below, how many of you guys know the technical aspects of your deals really, really well? Like the funds, right? Like whatever it is that you're asking people for money for, you know all the numbers, you know it, you know why you're better than the next person from a logical aspect, yes or no? Yes? Okay. Every single person in here saying yes. Amazing. Okay. I want to take you back to the very, very beginning of where I kind of learned this whole story thing and how I learned to get people to like throw money at me, kind of. And like, how many of you guys have ever felt like you're just like chasing prospects down? Yes or no? Like it just feels like you're constantly following up and like chasing people down. I remember at the very beginning, I looked at, you guys all know Grant Cardone, like Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk and all those people. I remember sitting like at the beginning and thinking like, it's easy for them to raise money, or it's easy for them to make sales, right? Because everybody knows them. How cool would it be for people to chase me? That's what I wanted, right? Because at the beginning, I was a nobody, right? I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. I was homeschooled. Like I'm like talking like a little farm in Indiana, like a half mile from, no, I was a nobody, right? So when I first started doing Instagram services, I know this isn't a fun, but I promise I'm going somewhere with this. When I first started doing Instagram services, we had our numbers down. Like we were probably the best in the industry when it came to being able to provide a service. We could grow about 10,000 followers per month on any account like clockwork. We knew our numbers. We knew the costs. We could outperform anybody else that was charging more than us. I knew every logical reason why somebody should go and give me money. Make sense? Kind of like everybody on here knows why someone should invest with you, right? And so I get on the phone because I was the guy that's doing all the sales. I get on the phone with a guy, big insurance guy. He owned like $100 million company. He wanted us to blow up his personal brand. We sit down and I start going through all of the numbers that, like, this was my pitch deck, right? I was like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why you should go with us. We're going to get you 10,000 followers, blah, 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 blah. And I get off the phone with him. We don't close. He said he would let me know. And then about a week later, he tells me he's going to end up going with somebody else. And, you know, that happens, right? But I was a little bit confused. I didn't know why. But about a month later, his Instagram account starts blowing up. Now, when you're in that kind of space, you guys, you know how kind of know everyone, right? You probably know a lot of people in your space. I was able to tell just by how his account was growing, who was the one that was managing his account. And it was frustrating to me because our numbers were better. We got better results for our clients. Our followers were more high quality. Yet this guy over here ended up getting the account. And on top of that, he charged about 10 times more than I did. Not like 2 or 3 times, like literally like 10 times more. How many of you guys have ever been like, ever talked with somebody and they didn't end up going with you, or they did not end ever up investing with you, and then you found out they did something that made absolutely no sense to you? Anybody else? Go with me on this?
Yeah.
Right? It sucks, right? It's like, I don't understand why that is happening. And that was me. I was so frustrated because I couldn't understand why that thing was happening. Why is it that I could have the best deal? I could know all my numbers. I could logically have all the reasons coming for me. Yet here it is. People are going with somebody else. Anybody else ever faced this, like struggled with this, like in their head a little bit? Yeah? 1 or 2? Yes? Okay, cool. We got some ones here. Okay. So I kind of went on a journey to go and figure that out. Now, I want to jump forward a couple of years here because this is really when it really clicked for me, because I was told that if I just got better at sales, right, for these next 2 years, if I got better at sales, if I got better at handling objections, if I came up with a better offer or all these other things, that was ultimately going to be the thing that made me money. And for the next 2 to 3 years or so, that is what I focused on. I took all the sales courses. I went and did all the things that I was supposed to do, just like everybody else. There's like a path, and I'm sure there's a path in your guys' industry, right? What everybody tells you to do, right? Well, like 3 years goes by, I have this podcast, which eventually became a very successful podcast with about 1.5 million downloads, but it was not at the time when this was happening. And I was working on a project where I needed to raise some money. I was looking for like 50 grand or something like that. It wasn't a whole ton of money, right? But I post on Facebook and I go, hey, I'm looking to raise some money. Got this project we're working on, blah, 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 right? The little things like that. Anybody interested in investing or anyone know who I might be able to go and talk to? Now, how many of you guys know who Russell Brunson is? 1 or 2 down below. If you don't, that's fine, but I'm just curious. Okay, about half and half. Okay, 1, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so real quick context on Russell Brunson. Okay, Russell Brunson, we wrote a bunch of books, but he wrote one of my favorite books of all time, this thing called Expert Secrets. But Russell started a software company. He did it off of a credit card, and he went from 0 to $100 million in 3 years with no venture capitalists, no funding, no backing, like literally off of a credit card. And they recently, a couple of years ago, got $1 billion valuation. And it's like him and his business partner that owns the whole company. So like when I say that like Russell Brunson is like super rich and has unlimited money at his fingertips, I mean that he has like plenty and plenty and plenty of money, right? This guy, like he knows numbers, he looks at data, he's got money, like he looks at it all and he understands what success looks like, how money moves, how investing works, right? And I happen to be friends with him on Facebook. And at the time, we do not have a relationship. I'm good friends with him now, but like we had not really interacted at all. And he commented on this post of mine, the first time he's ever commented on a post. And he commented and he said, Josh, pitch me the idea and I'll probably just give you the $50,000. Now, pause with me for a second, guys. How many of you guys, if you knew that a billionaire, a guy with like unlimited funds, were to comment on your post and be like, hey, pitch me your idea, How many of you guys know
Hello.
I do not want to screw this up? Yes or no?
Hello. Hello.
Can we mute that? Mute him.
It's done.
Everybody
Don't worry.
with me on this? You guys understand like this? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm like 25 at the time, right? 25, 26 years old. And I'm like freaking out, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to pitch Russell Brunson. This is insane. He's kind of like my idol at the time. And so I reach out to him on Instagram and I ask him a simple question. I was like, hey, Russell, I saw your comment. I'm excited to pitch you. Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want to know? What details do you want to know? Like, what information should I give you? Now, before I tell you his answer, what do you think he said? Comment down below right now. Keep in mind, we have no relationship. We don't really know each other or whatever. Some of you guys might have already heard this before. Tell me a story. Tell me a story. You don't know. Tell me a story. How does it make sense? Okay. The answer was this. He said, Josh, I don't really care about the deal. Just make it a good story. Now, I want you to think about that for a second, okay? Here's a guy that does all sorts of investing, makes money, has this. I don't care. Just make it a good story. And for the first time in my life, I sat there. I remember calling my coach right afterwards because I'm big into coaching. I've got this mindset coach, whatever. I'm like, what does he mean by that? Like, what do you mean, tell me a good story, right? Like, I didn't understand what that meant. And so once, like that pivotal moment there was like the thing that made me realize that people at that level, people that are willing to part with lots and lots of capital, how they're making decisions is fundamentally different. Yeah, that guy, Russell Brunson, yep, is fundamentally different than what we're taught, right? Most people, by the way, like how many of you guys learned sales from somebody that like taught sales or like that did sales? Levi, I know you, yeah, you did. But like when you learn from that, was that person like super rich? Was that person like a billionaire? Like for me, they weren't. How I made decisions about the world up until this point, how I made decisions about money, about asking people to give me money, about sales, about everything had been determined by people that weren't really all that successful, right? Make sense? They were very similar to me. And so when Russell had said this, when he was like, make it a good story, I had to go start studying and learning what he meant about stories. Does that make sense? Now, fast forward, Russell and I have actually done many, many things together now, right? And I'm gonna kind of explain this process here in just a second. We've partnered on things. I've spoken on his stages. He asked me to be the face of this book, actually one of his books with everything. But it started with this conversation of Russell asking me how to go and tell him a good story, right? And so I actually went. Little side note on this. Everybody with me so far? One or two? Makes sense? Everybody with me? I'll tell you what happened here in just a second. Everyone seeing how this connects? Okay. Oh, can you hear me now? Somebody muted me. Can you all hear me? We're good? Liba, can you?
Everyone can hear you.
Okay.
I think maybe manually try to mute everyone and you got muted.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, continue.
So I actually did an experiment after this where I actually went and sat down with 100 people that had bought ClickFunnels from Russell Brunson. Because if you're going to pitch Russell Brunson, you best not mess up, right? Right? You're going to pitch this billionaire. You get one shot at this. You best not mess up, right? And so I went and I got on the phone with 100 people, not like a fake 100 people, not like I called 20 people and called it 100, like actually did 100 phone calls. And I asked them the simple question. I said, what made you buy ClickFunnels? What made you buy Russell Brunson's offer? Now, some of these people had given Russell $1,000. Some of them had given him 25. Some of them had given him 50. And some of them had given him $150,000. And do you know the only common denominator between 100 phone calls? Any guesses? Great story, a good story. Specifically, the potato gun story. Now, you might know Russell. Maybe you have not followed him, but if you've been followed Russell for any length of time, you probably have heard the potato gun story, right? And so once this clicked for me, I realized, oh my gosh, if I start leading with stories, if I start like really understanding what it is that actually is going to make someone do a buying decision, perhaps this is the missing link. Perhaps this is the thing that's going to go and ultimately give me money, right? Now, up until that point, I had not yet made $1 million, right? Like when I first kind of had this, we had sold maybe 5 million, right? Over the course of 5 years, right? For clients and everything like that. That was about 2.5 years ago, maybe now. We've now done over 20 million. And by the way, I've never spent a single dollar on ads. It's been all completely organically. Why? Because we started leading with stories, right? And because we shifted this process to go, wait a second, before we go get to the offer, before we go to get to the technical details, right? Before we figure out all of that, first, we have to understand what is it that actually is going to get someone to buy, and that is the story. Everybody with me real quick? Yeah, 1 or 2 down below. I want to get, is it, well, let me pause. Okay, people are with, okay. Is it cool if I give you the framework that we use for this process? And then what I want to do is I want to kind of get into the technical aspects of this. I had to tell you the story of how this was found because otherwise I wouldn't be the storyteller, right? But I had to go and kind of do the story of how this, the framework here. And then I will take any questions. I want to dive into the details. I have two resources here. Like it's 2 pages of resources that will actually help kind of break this down. But simply by going through and starting to lead with story, I went through and took a podcast from 0 to 1.5 million downloads without any ad spend, right? Completely organically. Spoke on stages across the country, right? Without, and ever paying for all of this. I don't have a fund, but I do have investors in real estate. We do single family right now. And so like raised that yesterday, as a matter of fact, I raised almost $250,000 in 2 phone calls. And I didn't even tell them what property it was. Like I was like, hey, you want to do this? I told them the story behind it. And they were like, yeah, here's your $250,000, right? And it all came from starting with the story. Is it cool if I tell you the framework, the 3 steps, the 3-step framework for storytelling? Yes or no? 1 or 2? Okay, cool. So there's 2 parts to this. The first core framework here, I stole this directly from Russell Brunson. Do you know why I stole it from Russell Brunson? Because Russell Brunson is the guy that told me about stories. And I was like, oh, maybe if he went from 0 to $1 billion, without any funding, like maybe he knows a couple things, right? So the first framework here, the first 3 things is going to be your first worksheet here is called the hook, story, offer framework. Okay. Hook, story, offer. Everybody type that in the chat right now. Hook, story, offer. Okay. The hook, story, offer framework looks like this. How many of you guys have ever had a really, really good story or a really good offer? You've had something really, really important to say, right? And you go and you type it all out on Facebook or on Instagram or on LinkedIn or wherever platform it is, whatever, right? And you're so excited and all of that. And you post it or you send the email on it and it gets like 2 likes or no likes. And then you're like, well, dang, this was so good and so important. But yeah, like somebody posts a picture of their cat and it gets like 700 likes and like 500 comments. And you're like, well, I don't even understand people. Anybody, or is it just me? 1 or 2? You all know that, right? It's like the most valuable things that you have to share, nobody seems to care about. And you're like, this sucks. Ugh. That's why we don't actually start with the story. That's why we have to open up with a hook. Okay? Because what a hook does is what grabs someone's attention. Right? It gets them to stop. It gets them to say, hey, hold on. I've got something important here that I'm going to share. I can't lead with that, but I'm going to lead with this hook. And when you start leading with hooks, now you break someone's attention for long enough to where now they're interested and like their brain actually like stops the scroll and like it focuses in on what you're about to say. It's like the pre-frame. Everybody with me on this? One of my favorite books is, I have it up here somewhere. I pull it all the time, but it's Persuasion. And the entire premise of the book is that like what happens right before whatever you share is actually going to determine the result of it. That's kind of like what a hook does. And once you start using hooks, what'll happen is people will stop. Now you have their attention and you're going to hold them for long enough to be able to go and share the importance of this. When we started using hooks in our stuff, like in our advertisements or in everything, whatever, like our engagement rate went up, our click-through rates went up, our opt-in rates went up, everything went up. Why? Because now we had their attention. Everybody clear? Okay. And don't worry, we'll dive into these more here in just a second. After we now have their attention, once we have the hook, now we're going to go to the story. Okay. And the story, think about this. I didn't like when Russell told me, and Liba, I'm going to ask you this real quick. I'm sure you've heard people tell you the stories are powerful. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever stopped to question and ask yourself, like, why are they powerful?
Yes.
Okay. Because I did. I was so confused by that. I was like, okay, clearly stories work, but why? Like, why do stories work more than facts and emotion? Or I mean, facts and logic, right? I want you to think about life for a second. Think about however old you are. Think about the entire life that you have lived up until this point. If you were going to go and explain anything about what has happened in your life up until this point, what would you tell somebody?
My story?
Your story, right?
Right.
Because you would tell someone stories about your past life because that's how people remember things.
Right.
People don't remember facts, right?
People remember how I moved into my trailer to afford my 7 buildings. No one
Right.
remembers about my 7 buildings.
People remember how they went through their life. People remember things and the circumstances because a fact is singular. It's one dimensional, right? But a story, how many of you guys know a story is more than one dimensional? Yes or no? A story is a process, right? There is a beginning and there is an end, right? This is actually very important. Fact is a dot, right? But a story has a beginning and it has an end and it has a series of events that happen with inside of that. And so now it's not just me remembering one thing. It's me remembering a process, and my brain, because that's how we live, that is how we remember things. Everybody with me on this? Y'all with me, right? Yeah. Okay. So if I lead with a fact, I have no context. I have no idea whether it's for me. I have no understanding about whether or not we're the same, right? If I were to come on here and the very first thing I would have told you was, hey, you should use stories, and then I told you why, would you have believed me? Probably not, right? Yeah, Sean says no. He wouldn't have believed me. Well, hey, Daryl, maybe, right? Well, Daryl, yeah, because you probably already believe stories, right? But like now I've given you context. Now I would love, like now you understand how I discovered stories. So there's this process. And so the next piece is after we have their attention, now we're going to share a story, right? And yeah, I love that. Lorna Williams says, facts tell, stories sell. 100%. I love that line, right? Make sense? And this story is we're going to go back in time. We're going to build that connection. We're going to build that emotional thing. And then we're going to lead them ultimately to the final piece here. If we don't use story, though, here's what's going to happen. One of my favorite books of all time, but also lines of all time. How many of you guys have ever read this book, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi? Okay. Phenomenal book, by the way. Okay. This guy made like $100 million with one offer. But in this, he has this famous line from the books, and he says, if you want people to think you are smart, teach so that they understand. Basically, give them a bunch of facts. But if you want people to give you money, teach so that they feel understood. Right? And he said that premise right there is ultimately what got him to get people to give him $100 million. Right?
So Josh, with that being said, everyone here is like asking questions like, what's a good hook for a post? What's a good hook for this? But maybe you can help explain to everyone what is like the, you know how like 1 + 1 = 2? How does X plus, whatever equal a good hook to follow that story? Maybe because obviously everyone here is raising money. You just raised money yesterday on 2 phone calls. So there's a framework that you duplicate. How do you do that?
Yep. 100%. Can I get to the last part of the framework and then dive into that? Is that cool? Okay, cool. Okay. After I now have a story that takes people through this process, that makes them feel understood, that relates to them effectively, then I'm going to end with my offer or my call to action. Right? Now, if you're raising money, your offer is going to be invest in the fund. If you're selling a product, it's going to be sell. If it's, you're getting to someone to go opt in, right? It's hook, story, offer, right? And the offer simply needs to go, and this is important, it simply needs to match what that story and deliver on what that story said. If you don't have an offer, then the story is worth nothing, right? Then everyone's gonna be like, you're amazing, but then you're not gonna make any money, right? But once you have an offer, if that offer matches the story, they're gonna throw money at you. And one of the best examples of this, and then I promise we'll dive into the kind of the details here. One of the best examples of this, I have a friend of mine, his name is Dan Henry. Anybody know Dan Henry? He's an internet marketing guy, so most people probably don't, okay? I'll wait, because Leba and Daryl are the only ones involved here. How many of you guys know Dan Henry? Yes or no? 1 or 2? Okay. Most of you guys don't. Okay.
If you don't, look him up.
He's hilarious. He is hilarious. All right. He's made a crap loads of money, right? He's a marketer. But Dan, we were talking about stories one time. He says, yeah, Josh, stories are everything, because if you have a good story and you have the offer to match it, they'll buy it every single time. And I said, I don't believe you. I was watching him do a presentation one time. It was a webinar. And about 30 minutes in, he gets done with his story. He hasn't taught the frameworks yet. He hasn't done anything else like that. Right. And he gets done with his story and he says, at the end of this training, I will have an offer that will show you how to do that. Let's get through the training first. And the entire chat just blew up. And they were like, we don't even need the training, just link. And everybody was asking for the link to go buy before he even got through the rest of the training. Right. He ended up making over $1 million off of that one presentation, one time, $1 million. Right. Because his offer matched his story, and that's where it went. So it's hook, it's story, it's offer. Y'all with me? Okay. And if we follow that process, what people are actually going to buy is your story. This is what got Russell to give me money. This is what Russell put me on stage. It's why I've been able to go and get on so many different podcasts, get people to listen, is because people relate to and they feel connected to and they understand the story. One more quick example of this. If you've ever read the book Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably have, right? But in that, he talks about where he went and how did he get the big super successful investor or whatever to go with them versus the other client firms that were way bigger and way better. Is he appealed to his emotion. He told them a story. He future paced about, I forget, it was like the soccer field or the whatever the thing was. And he related it back to a story in this guy's life and they ended up winning that massive deal. It's because people actually buy the story. Your actual offer simply just has to match with whatever your story is. And as long as that offer matches whatever the story is, you're set. So when you're going, whether this is doing an ad or a presentation online, whether you're going and pitching on a phone call, whether you're going in front of an investor group, right? The 3 steps you have to think through is, what is my hook? Meaning, what is the thing that is going to grab their attention and make them actually pay attention here? How many of you guys know you've ever been in a meeting, in a boardroom meeting or on a phone call where you know the person is listening, but you know they're completely checked out? Like they're not actually listening at all. Anybody, right? You know exactly what, 100%, right? It sucks. The hook is what gets them to go, okay, wait a second. I will check back in here for a second because now you have my attention. I'm interested. Second is, once I have their attention, don't go to facts. Then you're going to bore them, put them to sleep. Now we got a story. Now make it feel like it's for them. Because without it, right, you're going to sound really smart. Jim Rohn, you guys all know Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins' mentor, right? One of my favorite stories by him is he started selling life insurance and he would go and he would do all these presentations. And he would do presentation after presentation after presentation. He would get done. And what did he always hear? Well, that was the best presentation I've ever heard. That was the best presentation I've ever heard. And he said, after a month or 2 of this, I sat down and asked myself, if my presentations are so good, why is nobody giving me any money? Right? And the answer was because he was really good at telling facts. He was really good at presenting all the numbers. He was really good at showing them why they should do something without any story there. Persuasion is not presentation. Presentation is, I have all my numbers and ducks in a row. Most of us are really good at presentation. I had the best presentation ever, right? Presentation doesn't make money. Persuasion does. Stories will get this persuasion. And then finally, once we are done with that, makes us unstoppable. Now people want to give us money. Doesn't even matter what the offer is. They just want to give us money now. They want to work with us. You ever experience someone where you're like, I don't even know what you're selling, but I want to work with you, right? Anybody? Yeah, Sean's with me here, right? How do we become that? We become that person when they relate with us, our story. And then finally the offer, right? Does the offer match? So that's the first worksheet. And then the second worksheet, which we'll dive into here. I think you want to go into hooks in here, but the second worksheet is actually how to break down a story. So the actual different elements within what we call the master story. And that master story is what I developed to figure out, okay, if I could only tell one story, what's the one story that I've got to tell to actually get them to go and buy? And that's what we call the master story. Before we move on, is everybody with me on this? 1 or 2? Get some clarity here. Okay, so Liba, I'm going to ask you, or maybe we ask the audience, for the rest of our time here, do we want to talk about hooks or do we want to talk about actually storytelling? If you guys want hooks, type hook. If you guys want storytelling, type story. Liba, what do you think?
Personally, for me, I think coming up with a really good hook is like when everyone here knows their story. Everyone here knows that they feel it. I think a hook is the hardest thing, but I'm going to let majority rule. And then guys, just so you know, we're going to go into this till about 1:45. So Josh is going to give everything you got, but I'm going to make sure you guys find all his socials and everything to follow him. He's got a lot more material for you guys. All right.
Okay.
What's the majority?
It's like half and half. It really is.
I might have to just bring you back on this on the webinar later date.
Okay, so I have an actual handout for the story part. I would say that like a really good resource to go look for hooks would be if you go to Alex Hormozi's website, acquisition.com. He has some free trainings on there with Hook. $100 million offer is this book. He also has a whole section on naming. A couple of just real quick things on Hook. And by the way, this is on your sheet. So for hooks, just a couple things to notice about hooks. And then I want to go into story just real quick. Inside of a hook, what a hook is supposed to do is three things. Number one, it needs to grab people's attention. Number two, it needs to create intrigue. And number three, it needs to get them to want to listen or opt in. Okay. Here's the biggest mistakes people make with hooks. This was me. Okay. When I first started going, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a hook. Here's what I would always do. Ready? I would try to educate, inform, or explain. That is not a hook. You with me? A hook is not designed to educate. It is not designed to inform. It is not designed to explain. If we do any of those three things in our hook, people go, oh, I'm trying to be taught something. I'm not interested in being taught. Y'all with me? Okay. So when we're thinking about a hook, a couple things in here. Actually, I'll just read this off super duper quickly directly from Hormozi's book. But a couple of things to think about when you're doing a hook is, if I can find the page here. Inside of your hooks, like if you can call out an avatar, if you can give someone a really magnetic reason, give them a goal, integrate a time interval, or complete with what he calls a container word, right? So like workshop or masterclass or boot camp or something like that. Those are really good things that are going to make for headlines for offers. You can apply those same type of concepts for hooks. I'll give you one really quick example of a hook and then we're going to move into story. Is that cool? Imagine I were to say, and this is how most people would do it, right? When it comes to a hook, imagine I were to say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to build a funnel that sells stuff online. How many of you guys are interested on a scale from 1 to 10? 1 to 10, how many of you guys are interested? I'm going to teach you how to build a funnel that helps you sell stuff online. If you have no idea who I am, never seen me before, how interested am I? Well, we have 10s and 1s. Really? You guys are interested at the level 10? You guys want to know that? A 2, a 1, a 5. Yeah. Right? Why? It's vanilla. It's generic. It's boring. Right? But now, what if instead I went and the headline was, and I actually pulled this was Russell's most successful headline, right? Made $100 million with this. My weird niche funnel that's currently making me $17,947 per day. And how to ethically knock it off in less than 10 minutes. On a scale from 1 to 10, how many of you guys are interested in learning from that if you wanted to sell stuff online? 10s, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Did I educate in that headline or in that hook? No. Did I inform? No. Did I explain? No. What did I do? Or what did he do? He grabbed your attention, he created intrigue, and he made you want to go and learn more. Make sense? That's what a hook should do. Go with me?
That's pro. That's pro. They're getting pro experience before they get.
Cool. Okay, so that's hook. You're going to get both of these sheets. I promise. Liba, I've sent them over to you. Make sure everybody gets them here. I want to go into just story really quickly here because Liba, how many of you guys, real quick, $100 million offers is the book, by the way, $100 million offers by Hormozi. Real quick, how many of you guys think you know your story or have your story? 1 or 2 down below. Just, I want to make sure on this. Okay. Most of you guys. Awesome. We have a 3. Not sure what that is, but cool. Okay. So I thought I knew my story as well. Now I don't know your guys' stories. I don't know your level of expertise. Perhaps you are experts at telling your story. Okay. I thought I was. I can only share from my personal experience. But here's what I did when I wanted to tell my story. When I told my story, I would say, here's where I started. And then I would focus a majority of my time on the fact that I found this thing and here were the results. I would focus a majority of my time on making myself look good, on making myself look like when I applied this thing, that these were the results that I was able to get with it. Because I thought that is what people wanted. I thought people wanted to know that whatever I was about to share with them actually worked. Everybody relate with me on this, right? So I would go and I would start doing workshops. I would do these presentations online. I would speak on stages and I would go across and I would start sharing my stories with people and I would get in front of hundreds of people. And guess what? If I was not trying to sell anything, everyone would be like, oh, yay, that was such a good story. Josh, you're so inspiring, right? But then I actually started asking people for money. I tried to raise money. I tried to sell things. And interestingly enough, it fell flat. These same people that were like, oh, Josh, you're so inspiring, right? Did not buy from me. And so I ended up hiring a $52,000 is what I paid him, $52,000 coach to help me understand how to do one thing. How do I present well? How do I present in such a way that gets people to give me money? Okay. Would you guys like to know the premise of everything that he taught me about stories? One or two? Now, keep in mind, this is like one of Russell Brunson's coaches that helps him how to present. He's made tens of millions, probably over $100 million at this point, speaking on stages across the world. He said, Josh, you have to understand something. People move, people take action, people buy, people give you money, people do all of these things when a single word is created. Does anyone want to guess what that word is? I gave you a little hint. I said when it is created.
Mhm.
Daryl says value, them, trust, action, urgency, interest, faith. These are good guesses. He said, Josh, the single word that you have to go and learn how to create when I watch your presentations that you're missing is desire. Right now, nobody actually desires what you're selling them. And I said, oh, well, why is that? And he said, well, Josh, here's why. I'm going to give you an analogy here really quick. Okay. I know we're almost up with time, but I really want to drive this point home. Okay. He said, desire is created through contrast, right? So if you have nothing, you want everything. But if you already have everything, do you want more of everything? Not really. The example would be this. Imagine you have a rubber band and you were to go and you were to put your finger in the rubber band and you were to pull it across the table, right? And one side of the rubber band is where you want to be and the first side of the rubber band is where you're at. If you just pull that rubber band across the table, did you actually move at all? No, because you didn't anchor it anywhere, right? But he said, if first you were to take the one side of the rubber band and you were to anchor it down on this side of the table, and then you were to pull the other side all the way this way, is now there like a big space here? Yeah. And the rubber band wants to collapse, right? It wants to pull, right? He said, that pull represents desire. And so he said, Josh, the only thing that you're doing right now is you're telling everybody how great you are. He said, if you really want people to create desire, the most important part of storytelling, the most important part, everybody take note of this, the most important part of storytelling is pain. Everybody say pain down below. Pain.
Pain.
We all know that people do things for one reason only, or two reasons only, right? Number one, to move towards pleasure. Number two, to move away from pain. But how many of you guys know that pleasure is way more desirable when you're actually in pain, right? And he said, Josh, every presentation I've listened from you, you're not sharing the pain, right? If you can start with pain, if you can start by sharing the pain, if you can connect with people at a deep, emotional, painful level, they will follow you to the ends of the earth. Now, how deep you go on that pain is going to be very different for each person. Today, I did not share that much pain with you. I shared with you the pain of what? The pain of not understanding why I had the best offer with all the numbers and they went with somebody else. It was painful for me. And I was frustrated. I didn't know how to make money. If I were on a personal development training, I would share the pain of losing my brother in a helicopter crash with a pregnant wife and a 5-year-old son, right? I would talk about going around the world and get my wife getting sick with an intestinal eating parasite and me losing all of my money. So the pain must match the pain of your audience. And so when you're sharing your story, if you want people to give you unreal amounts of money, I'm talking about levels and sums of money that you cannot possibly fathom, you must connect with them in your story with pain. Open with that, lead with that. Inside of this secondary framework here, the secondary page, it will walk you through the elements of that master story. And you will be able to connect with people at a deep emotional level. And once you have them there, now they're interested. Now they're connected because now they feel like you and that member are the same. Everybody clear on that? Is that helpful? One or two? Okay. So I'm going to turn it back over to Liba. I don't know how much time we have here. I want to be respectful of everything. I'm down to do whatever, but.
Amazing. Well, first thing, I've heard you talk about Hook Story Offer, and every single time all my brain is doing, because I'm raising money and by the way, Hook Story Offer works for everything. When you're recruiting people, when you're hiring project managers. I was just on a call earlier this morning with Alicia's Women's GOB Network group. And this woman was talking about how she vets people. And I'm like, she's got to have an amazing Hook Story Offer for how she gets people to work with her. And it works everywhere. I also want to let you guys know that I'm using a computer and a phone because I'm having problems connecting. So hopefully I won't lose anybody. But while we're going to go into Q&A, because guys, what you heard of Josh is just the tip of the iceberg. Poor guy needs like at least a proper 2 hours to educate you and bring you to his speed. Every single person that is on this call is going to get an email from me today after the call with the worksheets, links to a bunch of resources that we did not create from Alex Hormozi's website. I actually texted Josh. I was like, Josh, do you have a sheet that people can actually fill out? And he's like, no. And I was like, all right. So I went to Alex Hormozi's website and I actually started making something custom for you. And I was like, why am I recreating what a guy who's done 10 times more than me has? So I'm going to give you everything. We have a lot of people on this call and it's going up and down. So I'm going to only be able to choose a few of you guys for Q&A. And then we're going to talk and follow up about the July 13th Mixer in Chicago. And then the big event in October that if you're raising money and you're serious about your business, you're going to want to be in that room. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a little bit. And also, guys, next week on the webinar, I'm bringing someone who runs Funds of Funds. He actually introduced me to a broker that's hooking me up with institutional investors, which we're going to talk about next week. Sky is the limit when you're working with other people's money, and the opportunity is endless. And Jim and I meet once a week to talk about how can we bring value to this group. And it really boils back to feedback from you guys. So I want to say thank you to everyone who emailed me, texted me. I appreciate that. We have a couple minutes. Jim, if you could launch all the polls as we go so everyone can see the polls and can start answering them. I'm going to open the floor, and I think I'm going to take, because we might go a little over time, and whoever wants to stick around for it can. I have a really great offer for you guys at the end. Let's start with 2 or 3 questions from you guys in the audience while Jim makes the polls live to ask Josh directly. On Zoom, you can raise your hand and I can pick on you if someone has a question.
Daryl, can you launch a Zoom? I'll launch the polls.
I got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go with Sean. He's got his hand raised.
All right, so
Hello.
yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of my investors, they're fairly well off. They have money to invest. And how do you hook somebody that's, a lot of them will tell you they're just interested in the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, it's interesting. We just did a workshop in front of about 700 people with all corporate, like big companies, big teams and everything like that. And one of the things that everybody told me, well, when you sell to B2B, like they care about the numbers, they care about the results. That's all they care about, right? And I told them, we're going to go in there. We're going to do a 3-hour workshop and we're going to tell a bunch of stories. And everyone told me, they were like, it won't work. And then I called my coach and I was like, hey, everyone's telling me this won't work. Should I pivot and do what they're telling me to, or should I go and do this? And he goes, Josh, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. You'll hold people's stories, like hold people's attention forever if you just have the right stories. Now, the reason I say that is, and I'm going to come back to your question here in just one second, is if you have the luxury of knowing what hook is going to work right away, great, you can start with the hook. But most of us do not have that luxury, I'm guessing, right? Most of us probably don't know exactly what hook is going to work for what it is that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm actually going and I'm starting with this, where I'm actually going to start is I'm actually going to start with figuring out what the story is going to be. Because if I can figure out what the story is going to be, then what's going to happen is I can then match a hook and I can start testing different hooks. And I can actually throw out, Russell calls it hook testing, right? It's like I can start throwing out 3 or 4 different hooks that are all going to link back to the same story. So when I'm looking at, let's say, a group of investors, or I'm looking at a group of, people in corporate America that, aren't kind of in this world, what I'm looking for is, okay, what are they actually after? And like, what story could I tell them? What experiences have they been through that if I could share them with this, instantaneously, we're going to connect. And the example that I always think about with a story is I want you to imagine, because what a story is really doing is it's building that personal relationship with somebody in the masses, right? So think about this for a second. I want you to imagine that you were non-religious, right? And you were to go in and you walk into a room, and the very first thing that somebody says is they get up there and they talk about how they're a Mormon priest, and that they've studied the Book of Mormon, and that God has given them this message for Mormons that if they just follow this, right, they can get whatever it is that they want. No matter what that thing is, no matter the offer, the frameworks, the training, no matter what, are you interested in it? Yes or no? If you're not Mormon. Sean?
It's obviously intriguing, right?
You're going to be interested? If this is
Maybe.
for Mormons, by Mormons, God ordained by Mormon, and you have no religious background whatsoever?
I'm always looking at options, right? But yeah, basically, no, it's not appealing initially.
Right. But now I want you to imagine you were Mormon. And Mormonism was at the core of everything that you did. I'm not Mormon, by the way. I'm just using it because it's a great example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is someone that you looked up to, and they told the story about how Mormonism changed their life or whatever, and they've got this message from God. Instantaneously, are you interested?
Yeah, you're connected with them because you have a
100%.
common bond.
Because we have a common bond. So when I'm looking at a group of, if I'm yours, I'm looking at a group of investors, I'm going to say, hey, okay, where do we bond? What story can I tell them, right? That when they hear this story, we're going to be able to connect. And that ultimately is how am I going to lead that to my offer? Then I can figure out the hooks after that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep. Cool.
All right. Any other questions we have? We have time for, I think, one more. Maybe someone has a question about something specifically, like maybe they're doing a certain raise amount right now. I know I am for a couple buildings. I got some high rises that I'm looking at after this call. I mentioned this on the call with Alicia that, God works in amazing ways. About 1.5 years ago, I was in negotiations for this building downtown. We lost in a bidding war. We were like, fine, we're not going to overpay. And they came back to us yesterday and we're visiting that building again for even less than we offered. So I'm pretty excited about that. Any questions? All right, here we go. Ryan, what do you spend most of your time working on? What do you mean? Because Josh works his business. Can you be specific?
When it comes to the stories, though, I think, Ryan, is that what you're asking? Like as far as presenting is concerned?
Like honing your craft.
Yep, 100%.
3-4 years or whatever, how long you've been doing this.
100%. So two pieces here. And it's funny because every single time I work with any form of client, right, whether we're selling, the highest offer we've sold, guys, is $100,000, right? For an offer all the way down to, $2,000 offers, right? And the number one thing that everyone wants to do is they want to tell the facts in the store. They think they have a story a certain way or whatever. The number one thing that we have to go as far as working on them is we have to connect, right? And so we use this thing that we call I to you. Right. It's a very, very simple framework that goes like this. How many of you guys have ever heard a speaker go and they tell you, they get up there, they have this awesome story and it's, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. We all heard that, right? Right. And you look at them and you're like, you're amazing. Oh, right. Who cares? Instead, we do something very simple when we're teaching the stories. This is going to automatically make, because our job, our thing is like, we've got to be one with our listener. If we're on the same team, if we're the same person, then we're on this journey together. So when we're telling a story, we go, I did this. And then immediately we go, have you ever? And I turn it to them. And I'm going to go and I'm going to take this. I'm going to connect with them on this level. So like, as simple as that sounds, and obviously it's much deeper than just that, but that simple premise of going through and connecting with people on this deep level, going I to you, relating those emotions, coming alongside them, seeing them as one. If we can go through do I to you, that then leads us to point number 2 here, which is we must have a common enemy. Okay. So I do not care what your political affiliations are. I do not care. It's just a great example. Okay. In 2016, why was Donald Trump so effective? Because Donald Trump was very, very, very good at labeling the enemy, that America was like, oh my gosh, we hate the swamp too. And so when Donald Trump came along and was like, hey, I've been screwed. He's a billionaire. He is not like us in any way, shape, or form, right? But he convinced half of the Americans that he understood them and he was like them and we were fighting a common enemy, right? And because of that, look what happened. Once again, I don't care about your political, whether you love him or hate him, could care less, right? The point is that as a presenter, if you can go and connect with that audience on a deep level, right? This is why I kept asking you, right? Someone just put that 1 or 2 down there. Why am I always going, you guys all with me? I'm raising my hand, right? I'm engaging you, right? Now we're on this journey together, right? Obama did the same thing. Yeah, 100%. Obama was a phenomenal speaker, right? I just was too young, right? I saw Trump. I didn't see Obama, right? Make sense? So when honing the craft, it's how do I connect? How do I bring this together? And then how do I label an enemy that we're fighting? Because if we're on the same team, if I believe we're on the same team, we're going to follow you to the ends of the earth. Make sense?
Makes so much sense.
And real quick, just because of this question coming up, books that I recommend reading when it comes to presenting, lots of really, really good books out there. Expert Secrets is going to be my favorite one, right? This is more than just presenting, but this is a phenomenal book. And then the other book that's actually really good, if you just Google it, it's called $1 Million Speaker. If you go to $1 Million Speaker, all the books are good. The psychology books of like Oren Klaff or whatever, but specifically when it comes to presenting, that $1 Million Speaker book, it's written by a guy named Joe Giletti and his business partner, Eileen Wilder. Joe is actually the guy that I hired to help me with this. That $1 Million Speaker book will give you really, really solid frameworks that talk a lot more detail about what we have today. I would start with those 2 books.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Josh, we're definitely going to go a little bit over time, but I'm a super stickler for respecting people's schedules. And I think everyone loved that last week. Firstly, Josh is amazing. How many people here feels like, even though we all promised you guys fund managers on the call, how amazing was having Josh on this call? How much value did you get from him? Give us some feedback. Thank you, Daryl, Jennifer. A lot of you guys that are involved and responding. Jasmine, thank you for clapping. I've been working on an email to shoot you guys at the end of this call because last time I kept populating the chat box with everything, links to this and books to that, and people missed it and they were bummed out. Yes, Rob, huge value. Josh is amazing. So instead of putting everything in the chat box and whatever, and people missing it, I am actually going to, every single person that registered to this call, I have your email and I'm sending you an email. Check your spam. If you did not get it, I'm going to drop my phone number in here right now. This is my cell phone. It'll come straight to me. And if you don't get it, so just save my number. If you don't get an email from me later today, shoot me a text and say, Leba, I didn't get it. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because you're going to get a lot of things in this email. You're going to get the worksheets that Josh, I think you personally made.
Yeah, I did. Yep. I personally made these and I use them. Like I review these myself whenever I actually reviewed them before I came on here.
Okay, so we all know these things work. Then another thing you're getting is real quick. Who here yet, I know a lot of us are connected on LinkedIn, who here yet has heard of the big October event that we have going on October 26th in Chicago? Alicia's going to be there. Josh is going to be there. Jim's going to be there. Ronald's heard about it. Okay. Not a lot of people have heard about it. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that you get some information. In the chat box, raise real quick. Are you guys working on a project right now and you're raising money for it? Ricardo, Chris, John. Okay, you guys are raising money. Okay, great. So you know how every single week I bring you a fund manager on this call? And last week was Bobby. And Bobby, by the way, is blowing up with business from you guys, which is great. And if you were not on last week's call, I'm going to include Bobby in the email that I'm sending out so you guys can meet with him. He's phenomenal and he's hooking people up with $1 to $10 million in funds for fix and flips deals. He works on the equity and the debt side. So in October, I'm bringing these people to you live. I'm bringing them on the stage. I'm bringing them in person. We're setting up round tables for you guys to actually meet these people, shake their hands, get to know them, work with them. Having a relationship with these people is very different than cold messaging them, meeting them on LinkedIn. You actually get to meet them and do business with them in person. The ticket event price is $500 to come. And a lot of people are like, I really, really want to come and this and that. And people are like bringing their friends. And Daryl actually was like, listen, the GOB is awesome. People work really hard to be here. Can we give these guys a discount code? And mind you, no one's profiting on this event. We've got a couple partners on it. Everything goes straight to the event, the speakers, the entertainment, the food, everything. And I mean that. You can ask ask Jim. Jim's hosted events in his lifetime. It is not a profit machine. So I was like, I don't know. And I crunched the numbers beforehand and I put a huge discount code of 15% on the ticket price, which is an enormous amount and is going to be live until Thursday night. And then that discount code is gone. I don't know if we're going to repeat it. So in the email sending out to you guys is going to be all of that, Josh's paperwork, the link to Alex Hormozi's website so you guys can check it out. And then next week, make sure you come because I'm bringing a guy that can introduce you to private investors, institutional money for some of you guys that are playing at maybe my level or above. And yes, Daryl, we are having it. It's going to be crazy and insane. So with that said, I'm going to let Josh go. And then we are going to do a remainder follow up here. I know Daryl likes to give out homework to everybody. Josh, thank you for coming on the call. I know we had a fluctuation between 50 and 60 people, but you were interesting enough where everyone stayed on. So
Can I say one last thing here really quick?
yes.
Well, good. First off, thank you guys all so much for having me. I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to share. Liba, a huge thank you to you. Just one real quick thing about the event. Liba did not ask me to share this, but I am planning on coming to the event, by the way. Guys, if there's one thing that I have learned when it comes to this whole game of money and this business and everything like that, it's that it is like the deals happen when you get in the room, right? Like when you can actually sit down and share your story with someone face to face, like you are hooked forever. I have made more money and more connections off of that piece. And if you call yourself an investor, if you call yourself somebody that is serious about getting into this game, right? And listen, this might be a little offensive to some people here for a second. I'm gonna call some people out, but it's like you do, if you call yourself someone, you do the things that person does, right? And like serious investors get in the room. That is what we do, right? That absolutely has to happen. And so I would challenge you, if you're considering not coming to the event, keep in mind, I make absolutely nothing on this. I have no affiliation with this whatsoever. I'm paying for a ticket and I'm coming, okay? But like, get in the room. One connection, one relationship, right? One relationship will change everything. The best relationship I met down in Miami was Liba, right? Like this has blossomed into business and now I'm in front of you guys and she's coming into get in the room. All right. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate you all. And hopefully I'll see you guys in October, whenever it is. It's on my calendar.
October 26th. And hang on, guys. Josh is heading out, but don't head out because I got a few more things for you. Thank you, Josh. Actually, someone just texted me. Can you post it right now? I'm going to, because I'm actually posting the discount link right now with the code and everything. You can click it. It goes straight to Eventbrite because I'm going to give you guys more time. The email's not going to come out for a few hours, but it's Thursday night. It will no longer be live. For the few of you that are hanging out, it's after 2 o'clock. If you don't want to hang out, you don't have to. I actually have to run downtown, but I texted the guy that I'm doing a walkthrough with and I said, you're going to wait for me because I'm going to call with people and I want to offer them more. And I had something that I had to share with you guys. Is it okay if I share with you guys? I had a call with someone who could introduce me to institutional money and I did not know that I was even qualifiable to have this conversation. Can I talk to you guys about that? Write yes in the chat box so I don't want to bore anyone. I know we all have work. Do you guys know what institutional money is? Let me explain to you what institutional money is if you're not aware of what this looks like. So basically, I was at this event at Fund Launch and I heard about people raising money like $40 billion for a fund. And I was like, I said, that's not true. I said, normal people can't do that. That was the first thing I said. And then I started learning and I started meeting people. And one of the things is about the speaker that's going to be in October, the keynote, it's called the $2 billion man. He raised $2 billion himself for deals. He worked in oil and all these different kinds of things. And I started realizing that you absolutely get normal people. It takes a little bit to get there. You got to do a couple of deals. You got to build a track record, got to build a fund, but normal people can do that. And it all boils down to this. If you guys have a deal flow, right? And deal flow means you have a lineup of stuff going on, not like one or two houses. But by the way, if that's where you're at, that's where I started. I started with a tiny flip house on Howard Street in Chicago. It was microscopic. My husband was living out of a suitcase. We didn't have dressers. That's how we started. And then we did a couple flips. And then I landed back in a trailer to afford 7 buildings in Westchester that I'm in right now. It's a process to get there. But on next week's call, the gentleman, his name's Kirill. He does something called managing funds of funds. And he also works with people, and I like to use a more fun term, which is just rich as fuck. I hope that's okay, pardon my French. There's those kinds of people, private investors, then there's institutional investors. And on next week's call, I had a phone call with these guys and they were like, Liba, you absolutely can raise money from these guys, absolutely, for what you're looking at, because I'm looking at 2 high rises downtown, plus 6 big commercial buildings somewhere else in Illinois. And it's crazy. I was like, are you serious? He's like, if your numbers line up, these guys are going to want to back you as long as you find the right partners. So on next week's call, I am lining up what it looks like to find the deals, how to find the right partners so that you can have these conversations. Even if you can't raise the money from these guys yet, would it not make sense to be in the same room and talk to them? I spoke to them. I did not know I was qualified to speak to these people. And so anyway, if that makes sense to you guys, write yes in the chat box because I want to know. And then also Daryl's like, yeah, I want institutional money. Guys, you can buy buildings. You don't have to take the long road and buy house. You can start buying buildings. I think a lot of you don't realize that. A lot of you don't realize I jumped from houses to buildings. There was no like middle ground. So amazing. Okay. And last but not least, I want institutional money. Yes, Lorna, I do too. And I'm working on it. I think a lot of, yes, Ramal, it's pretty exciting. And a lot of these guys are going to be in my room in October. So I want to make sure that you guys know that. I want to let you know that you're all invited to come. Jim and I are working so hard, and Daryl, on making these webinars so worth your while. So please, 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 if you don't get an email from me, I posted my phone number. I'm posting it again. Text me and tell me, hey, I didn't get the email with all the information, all the stuff from Josh, the fund manager from last week. Text me. I want to know. We're only doing this series up until October. So this is a time for you guys to tap into my network, Jim's network, Daryl's network, my fund managers' networks. If you're raising money for a specific project that you can't talk about on the call because you can't publicize it, then just let us know. We're going to help you. We can get on a private Zoom call with you, a fund manager, and help you raise that money. We're not brokers. We're not taking anything from it. Alicia rose her hand, and then we're going to head off this call so I can head downtown for my walk there. Go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how many people, by dropping the one in the chat, are getting a lot of value from these GOB network calls, meetings, and sessions?
Me.
Yeah, me too.
I'm meeting the greatest people. You guys are so cool.
Awesome. One or two, if you're aware of the premium package with GOB network. If yes, if you are, two, if you're not. Okay. For all of those of you that are not, we will make sure that we update you. For the ones, if you guys are not already premium members, you got to make sure that you sign up, because this is how we're able to create value for you. And if you think this has been phenomenal, just wait. So make sure that you're contributing. GOB is 501c3. You can write it off. It's donation. So Sonia dropped the link in the chat to become a member. Make sure you become a member. It's 2 Starbucks visits. You know, it's a Happy Meal or whatever, because I'm sure they're expensive now. So thank you so much, Liba.
It's such a pleasure to come on this call with you guys. I've always wanted to find a community of people like myself, people that come from where I come from and are doing what I'm doing and want to rise to the heights that I want to rise to. And it's so crazy to see you and see you guys smiling. And Jasmine, Ryan, all you guys, Christian, Ricardo, Sean, thank you for your questions. Jim, Daryl, and I, we meet to serve you guys. That is what we're doing. And we don't make a penny on it. The GOB Network is a nonprofit. And I'm just excited. I think this is my philosophy. I live by this. When one wins, we all win. And so I want to help every single person on this chat win. A few of you already texted me some thoughts on what you thought of this webinar, and it's making me emotional. So I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on this call. I will see you guys next week. We're going to talk about big money next week, and I can't wait. I'll see you guys then.
Leba, give me 5 seconds.
Sure.
I know we didn't get to the survey questions, and I know one of them in particular was if anyone wanted to vote again for who their favorite host was. And,
do it, Jim.
And we mentioned number 1, did you want to vote for the blonde? If everyone still wants to vote for the blonde, type a 1 in the chat.
Wait, are you wearing a blonde wig today? Because that was something you promised us 2 weeks ago.
I cannot say. I won't. I will not admit to anything. So
that's why Jim's camera's off, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, you might want to scroll through some of the screens, Liba. So, all right. So I think I'm winning, Liba. I think I'm winning. I think.
You know what? If you win, it's okay. I'll take it. Jim, please.
All right, guys. It's great to see you here. Please bring a friend with you next week.
You're right.
And continue. Huh?
See your wig now. My computer's so slow. This is the best day ever. Can someone take a picture of this? I'm doing it right now.
No, we're not picturing this. This is, and I should turn the recording off before we start.
No.
All right.
Too late.
We'll see everyone next week. Thank you, guys.
Sweet.
Hey, don't forget about Commercial Multifamily Mastermind every Tuesday,
Every Tuesday
at,
morning.
at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Absolutely. And
You
all
guys
the
are
women,
amazing.
if you're not part of the GOB Inc., it's our women's only group. Make sure you reach out to Sonia, Alicia, and join the GOB Inc. women's group. So, all right. Thank you very much. Had a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
See you
Thank
guys
you.
next week.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.